Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers. And today, oh my goodness, we got some sweet cards. We got maybe my new favorite Dragon Commander of literally all time, along with a bunch of other stuff, which means we should probably jump right into it. Start talking spicy new Baldur Gate cards. Before we do, two quick reminders. Number one, if you want to keep up on all the latest spoilers throughout the day, head on over to MTGpreviews.com. Number two, if you need some Commander Legends, Battle for Baldur Gate cards, or really any cards, you can get them from our awesome sponsor, Card Kingdom, by heading over to cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. Even get a free goldfish sticker. Oh yeah, and if you want even more Commander content, make sure to check out the MTG Goldfish Commander YouTube. Anyway, let's talk Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. So first up today, we got a new legendary dragon spirit, and I gotta say, I love this card. Miirym Sentinel Wyrm, a 6-mana 6/6 Temur dragon spirit, legendary creature with flying in War 2, and it says whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it, except that token isn't legendary if the creature's legendary. This is my style of commander. It's kind of like a weird Panharmonicon almost on a stick, and what impresses me so much about this card is it actually has me excited about a dragon commander. Normally, when I see a new legendary dragon, I'm honestly pretty meh on it. Much of the time, I'm like, okay, that card's kind of neat, but it's not as interesting or as powerful as some of the dragon legends that already exist. Dragons just have such good legends already in their tribe, so it's really hard to impress me or get me excited about a dragon commander. But Miirym, that has me legit excited. For the way I like playing commander personally, I would much rather play Miirym than the Dragon or Sign of the Dragon or Tiamat or any of these other really strong dragon commanders. So Miirym, if you actually look into what this card is, it's kind of like a Panharmonicon, or actually even better than a Panharmonicon. It does double up your ETB triggers, but you're getting an actual full token copy. What it really is a upgraded Reflections of Littjara for dragons from your command zone. Reflections of Littjara was a card I was really hyped about when it was spoiled, but then I tried to play with it and I found out there was a really big problem, which is there's a lot of legends in Commander. So I found I was just legend ruling myself a lot of the time, so I mostly don't play it. Miirym does what Reflections does, but it also gets around the legend rule, which is absolutely absurd. So I am really excited to build this with ETB style dragons. Like, this could do some serious work with Scourge of Valkis, Terror of the Peaks, Dragon Tempest, these cards that deal a bunch of damage when dragons come into play. If you can double these up with Miirym, it's going to end the game really quickly. Also, if you read Miirym closely, it triggers when a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, which I guess actually means it's kind of like a dragon version of Necroduality, more so than Reflections of Littjara. And that is a really big difference, because that means you can use blink effects and flicker effects to make even more dragons. One of the downsides of dragons is a lot of them are expensive. So you get on your Miirym, you cast some big 5, 6, 10 mana dragon, you get a copy of it, that's pretty sweet. But then you can take an Essence Flux for 1 mana and blink that dragon, and you're still gonna get the token copy, or Ghostly Flicker, or Illusionist Stratum. So this turns these blink effects into like absurd ramp spells. If you're blinking some really expensive dragon and getting a copy of it, it's almost like your Essence Flux is generating a whole bunch of mana. So I think that's a really cool way to build around Miirym. Also works really well with clones. Because it triggers ETB, you can get a big dragon down, Phantasmal Image it for 2 mana, or Metamorph it for 3 mana, and then you're still going to have a dragon entering the battlefield, because by the time the clone comes into play, it's going to be the creature type that you choose, so then you get another token copy of it. You can even use Spark Double, which is good copying your other dragons, but even better if you can take and copy your Miirym. You can really go off if you get multiple Miiryms on the battlefield. Also really good with Dragonstorm, another way to build around it. If you stack your Dragonstorm's triggers right, you can have Miirym be the first dragon that comes into play, and then as you tutor out more dragons, you're going to get double copies of them. Not that you really need double copies. If you're Dragonstorming for like 5 or 6, you're probably going to win anyway. But this does make it even better. Also works with token doubling stuff, Doubling Season, Parallel Lives, and remember, those tokens don't stick around till the end of combat or the end of turn. They are real permanent tokens that are going to be there forever. And this also is another payoff for all these weird Simic Dragon cards. It looked a little bit weird early in spoiler season. Kralessa and Renari, you're like, what are we going to do with these? Simic Dragons isn't a thing. Well, they make much more sense now that we have this awesome Temur dragon legend to lead them. So the only concern I have with this card is it is a little bit expensive. Like, to get going, it is going to be tough. You got to cast this, and unless you got a bunch of mana open, enough mana to cast another dragon, you're not going to start making more dragons until your next turn. So ramping a bunch, protecting your Miirym is going to be important. But if you can untap with this, you can do some absolutely ridiculous, spectacular, awesome things. And this is just exactly how I love playing Commander. So I've never built a dragon deck in Commander before, maybe for Commander Clash, but I don't have like a personal dragon deck. This is going to be the one. I am definitely building Miirym. Such a cool card. We also got Tomb of Horrors Adventure, a 6-mana 4/4 elf monk. It's a blue card, and it says when it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, and then whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy it. If you've completed a dungeon, copy the spell twice. You can choose new targets for the copy. Also worth mentioning, this works with any spell. You can copy permanents, creatures, artifacts, enchantments, along with instants or sorceries. So this card is undoubtedly powerful. Like, copying things for free, maybe copying them twice for free, is really good. My only concern for this card is 6 mana is a lot. This is another card, almost like we were just talking about with Miirym. You got to play this, then you got to be able to cast another spell in the same turn or wait a turn to use it, which is a little bit tough at 6 mana. 6 mana 4/4 just isn't great stats, so that has me worried. There's quite a few cards that we've seen so far from Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate that I'm kind of like, oh, that's a cool effect, but maybe it's one too many mana to really be good. That said, even considering it's a 6-drop, I think there's a few potential homes for this card. One is commanders that specifically care about casting a second spell. It's perfectly on flavor for OG, the Council of the Floor, Jorian, Ruin Driver, and I think that's the idea of this card. We just got 2 brand new second spell commanders, and this seems like an easy upgrade for those. Another place to play this is in Venture decks, Initiative decks, Dungeon decks. We got a bunch of new ones from Commander Legends, and also like Sephiroth or whatever. It does work well there. If you can get through a dungeon with Sephiroth, then you're just double copying your second spell every turn. That is kind of busted if you can untap with it. The other places could be good is just dedicated spell copying decks. If your deck is built around copying spells a bunch of times, this is another way to copy spells. So keep it in mind, 6 mana gonna be a problem. There's gonna be games when you play this and you don't have mana to cast another spell and it doesn't do anything right away. But if you can get up enough mana that you can play this and immediately follow it with another spell, plus you're getting that venturing ETB trigger, that's enough value to make this worth it on its own. And then in the right deck, this can offer a lot of value if it stays on the battlefield. Speaking of taking the initiative, we got another black initiative card, Ravenloft Adventurer, 4 mana 3/4 human rogue assassin. When it enters the battlefield, you get the initiative. When a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it with a hit counter, and when it attacks, if you've completed a dungeon, defending player loses 1 life for each card they own in exile with a hit counter on it. So Ravenloft Adventurer, I'm excited about this card for one really big reason. There's 2 places you would probably play this. The biggest one, and the main reason I'm hyped about it, is this is a way to make Etrata work. Etrata, for the longest time, was super hard to use because it was the only card that could put things into exile with hit counters. So it took a lot of work to actually win with Etrata. And then, just a couple sets ago, we got Myirym, which can also actually is very similar to Ravenloft Adventurer. When a creature your opponent controls dies, it gets exiled with a hit counter. But this was a way you could win with Etrata without attacking with it a whole bunch of times. Just win with 1 attack. Well, now we got Ravenloft Adventurer 2, so we're getting a little redundancy here. So I think this is going to be not only an auto include in Etrata, but one of the best cards in Etrata. If you want to win with Etrata, this and Myirym are the way to do it. The other place that this is kind of interesting is just in Venture decks, Initiative decks, Dungeon decks. I think in those decks, it's kind of fine. It gives you some graveyard hate, essentially. It is a replacement effect, so you're stifling death triggers with its exile instead ability. You're stifling reanimation decks because your opponent's stuff isn't going to go in the graveyard. So you get some upside as kind of a hate card, and then if you complete a dungeon, it can potentially deal a ton of damage when it attacks, although really, by itself, before you complete a dungeon, it's kind of medium power. So I think I would include it in like Sephiroth or Savannah, any dedicated trying to complete a dungeon archetype. But there, I think it's kind of just another card. We also got a pretty interesting red mythic demon of all things in Balor, a 5 mana 5/5 with flying that says when it attacks or dies, choose 1 or more in each mode, must target a different player. Target a player draws 3 cards and discards 3 cards at random. Target opponent sacks a non-token artifact, or Balor deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand. So Balor Balor, this card actually seems really powerful. It's notable in part because mono red demons, not really a thing. When I first saw this card, I kind of just glossed over the creature type and I assumed it was a dragon because it feels very dragony to me. 5 mana, 5/5 flying, mono red, all these attack triggers, but it's actually a demon. There's only 4 mono red demons in all of Magic and only one of them's a rare, and that was from original Kamigawa like 20 years ago. So just being a red mythic demon is pretty notable, but this card actually seems really strong. Its attack trigger essentially gives you a Burning Inquiry, which can target anyone. That's the one mode that you can actually use on yourself. Can be kind of risky. We've definitely seen a modern Burning Inquiry. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it mana screws you, discard all your lands, and you're just super wrecked. So it could be good or could be bad. And then you get this sack a non-token artifact ability, which really is hard to find a comparison for. The best I could find is Angrath's Rampage, which does have an artifact edict on it, but being non-token is an upside. There's so many treasure tokens in Commander now that it would be really easy for a lot of decks to be like, oh, all right, here goes my random treasure from Smothering Tithe or from Dockside or whatever. Balor gets around that, and then that last mode can deal a lot of damage. It's essentially like a Rune Flare Trap, and you've definitely seen opponents in Commander that have like 15 cards in hand, 20 cards in hand. They got their Reliquary Tower going and are just drawing all these cards. Balor's good punishment for that, and you're always going to be able to choose a player with the most cards in hand if you want to. So this could potentially deal a lot of damage on top of just being a nice on-curve body. So card works really well with haste and happens to be in the right colors for haste. Red, one of its biggest upsides, I think, is it's really good at giving its team haste. So you got anger, you got a ton of other ways to do this. This coming in by surprise with haste to get its triggers immediately, and then maybe it sticks around and you get to do it again the next turn. Or if it dies, you get to do it then as well, is really strong. You can also try to double up the triggers of this card. Something like Stronic Resonator, Lithiform Engine seems really good. When you're doing all of its modes twice every time it attacks, you are quickly going to wrath away the artifacts, wreck someone's hand with the weird Burning Inquiry mode, maybe refill your hand or improve your hand at least, and deal a bunch of damage. So where does this card fit? I think there's 2 homes. Number 1, pretty obvious, Demon Tribal. Demon Tribal can definitely use more good demons, and Balor is a good one. It's a demon that's more like a dragon. A lot of demons have these big downsides, and you gotta sack stuff or damage, all this weird stuff going on. Balor's got none of that. Balor is just pure upside. So if you're playing Rakdos of any variety or Hidetsugu, any Demon Tribal deck that has red in it, I think this is going to be great in your deck. Also seems really good, and I feel like we've said this a lot during Commander Legends 2 spoiler season, but in attacking decks like Ishin, where you double up its attack trigger, or Wolfgar, where you double up its attack trigger, that's where Balor's going to be at its best. So Balor seems like a really solid card. I mean, I guess you could also just play it for value in any deck and it'll be fine. It does have very powerful triggers, but if you're a demon player or care about attacking or can haste this in, Balor, a really powerful new option. We also got some surprisingly good reprints today. One aspect of Commander Legends Baldur Gate I've been a little disappointed with so far is kind of the lack of good reprints. We just haven't had a ton of high value stuff. If you're hoping for Mana Crypts and Dockside Extortionists and stuff like that, we just really haven't seen it, and honestly we still haven't, but we did get 2 pretty expensive reprints at rare today. Blade of Elves, the Myriad equipment, which is actually a pretty fun card and works well with the theme of the set thanks to the Myriad mechanic. I didn't realize this, but it's actually like $30, $32 or something, so that's actually a really high value rare. Same with Kindred Discovery, is up to like $25, a great card draw spell for any creature deck that's in blue. So these are 2 cards that are mostly expensive because they were only printed in supplemental products, like Commander decks and the like, many years ago, and haven't really got a full reprinting yet. So the lack of supply is what keeps the price high. If you actually look at how much play they see, I think Blade of Elves is in 1% of decks according to EDHREC, Kindred Discovery 3% of decks. So they do see play, but not a ton of play. So these are the exact kind of cards that I expect to come down in price a ton. If you've been waiting to get a Blade of Elves or you've been wanting a Kindred Discovery, I think these cards should drop down to $10 or less, like a really big price increase, being at rare and mostly being expensive because of their low supply. Also worth mentioning, first time either one has been in foil, I believe, unless I'm missing something. We've never had a foil printing. So if you're someone who likes blinging out your decks, now you're finally gonna have an option to foil it up. Also, Mindstone Burnished Heart, not $25-$30 reprints, but still solid uncommon reprints that you need in basically every deck. Very staple level reprints. Mindstone, one of my favorite mana rocks. Burnished Heart shows up in a lot of ramp decks that aren't green because there's very very few ways. Even a really horrible explosive vegetation that costs 6 mana altogether is worth it if you're playing a non-green deck and you don't have that good land ramp. So even though they're not super expensive, still solid reprints that I'm happy to see coming with sweet new art. In the land of commons and uncommons, we got a few interesting ones to mention. Ghost Lantern, our black adventure equipment, seems pretty solid. The adventure side, 2 mana instant to return a creature from your graveyard to your hand, and then the equipment side, 1 black to cast, 1 to equip, and says whenever a creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. So Ghost Lantern, I think this is in the conversation for sacrifice decks, especially like mid-power ones. It might not make the cut if you're playing, you know, the high-end power. You're gonna have all these tutors and other things you could play in this slot, but in kind of medium power, Corvald or Jury, this seems like a fun option. You can sack something, get it back to your hand, so you get kind of the, you know, Eternal Witness style effect, only for creatures, so I guess it's a raised dead, but still, that has value in a sacrifice deck. And then the equipment part, if you're sacking a bunch of creatures, can get a creature really big real quick. You can also go infinite with this if you can get this on a creature, and then have infinite creatures dying, like maybe the Eloise combo that has clue tokens becoming creatures and dying. You'll just make a creature infinitely big, or Gravecrawler, Phyrexian Altar Loops, make something infinitely big, one-shot someone, fling it at someone, whatever you want to do. So even though it's just a random little uncommon, I think there are potential homes for this card. As I said, if you're trying to build the 100% optimal version of these decks, maybe it doesn't make the cut, maybe it's not quite good enough, but in mid-tier versions of these decks, it seems like a really fun option. We also got Split the Spoils, kind of this weird green graveyard, almost Factor Fiction, 3 mana sorcery, exile up to 5 target permanent cards from your graveyard, separate them into 2 piles, and an opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile in your hand and the other into your graveyard. Piles can be empty, of course, so you can go for the mythical 5/0 split if you think you can talk someone into giving you all 5 cards. So Split the Spoils, in comparison to Factor Fiction, the green Factor Fiction is not a wrong way to look at this card, although there is one really important difference. It's basically Factor Fiction in reverse. With Factor Fiction, your opponent separates a pile of cards, and then you choose the pile that you get to keep. Split the Spoils is the opposite. You make the piles, your opponent chooses the one that you're going to keep. So what this means is you can never guarantee that you're going to get the exact card you want. Part of the power of Factor Fiction is, worst case, you get this single best card out of the top 5 cards of your library. Split the Spoils can't do that. Your opponent can always choose to give you the pile without the best card. That said, there's still a lot of value here. As a political tool, you can probably parlay this into a decent amount of value, a solid draw 2, draw 3 from your graveyard. I think the question is, would you rather play this than something like Eternal Witness or Skullwinder? They're the same amount of mana. The upside of like an Eternal Witness or Skullwinder, discounting all the blink shenanigans and so forth that you can do with it, but the upside is you get the one exact card that you want every single time. You guarantee you get the best card from your graveyard. Also, doesn't have the permanent restrictions, so you can get back a spell if you want to. Split the Spoils doesn't really do that. The upside to Split the Spoils is you could potentially be getting 2 cards, 3 cards, maybe even 5 cards if you talk someone into it. So we'll have to wait and see. I think that this isn't quite as good as Eternal Witness or Skullwinder, but that doesn't mean it's bad. If you're playing some sort of graveyard deck like Jared or Shradisi or Grist or Muldrotha, I'm gonna at least try this out. We'll see if it makes it. Maybe it ends up getting cut for, you know, another Eternal Witness style effect or something. But at least when the set releases, I'm gonna jam this in graveyard decks and just see how it feels, because I love the political aspects. Every time a Factor Fiction is resolved in a game of Commander, it's always fun. It gets the table talking. You're having this discussion about how you should split it up. Should you give them all 5? Is there a way you can politic your way into getting your best card even though you don't deserve it? That's all stuff that cards like that do. So I just love how these cards play in Commander. So even if it might not be quite as strong as one of the best cards in all of Commander, like Eternal Witness, I still think that Split the Spoils can be pretty good. We also got just a bunch of draft chaff stuff. Nothing super exciting to see here. I mean, some of it's interesting. You got some adventure stuff. Smothering Rug is kind of Storm Hate, although there's better Storm Hate cards available for most decks, but stuff that you should definitely keep in mind for limited at least. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers for today. So let me know what you think about all these sweet cards in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back tomorrow with more daily Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers. So until then, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.